Welcome to another Kings of War 3rd Edition Battle Report. Rematch. Kingdoms of Men versus Ratkin. 1995 points. Scenario was dominate. Greetings all, this is my 1995 point list. I have a spear horde with plague pots, a warrior horde with plague pots, a tunnel runners regiment with the brew of sharpness, a spear regiment, 3 warrior regiments, a shock troop horde with a brew of strength and plague pots, a shock troop horde with a sanguinary scripture and plague pots, 2 weapons teams, an ASB with the loot, a master scurrier with the wings of honey maze, and the war chief with the flea bag and the beast slayer sword. One of the things I really enjoy about doing battle reports and watching other people's battle reports is to learn from them and to see what glaring weaknesses that you have either in your tactics or in your list. And in this case, my list was actually not that bad, but I needed to for sure be able to ground large flyers, at least for a turn, to give my army time, because my army is mostly infantry and not super maneuverable, but not horribly slow either. So to that end, I went ahead and had gave the war chief the blade of the beast slayer, and so that makes him have pretty much 100% chance, barring really horrible luck, of grounding a large flyer. And my intention early was just to use him for war machine hunting, but now I gave him a multiple role, and I think that really made the list a lot better. Alright, let's look at deployment for the Kingdoms of Men. Down in the bottom left was a regiment of archers, a horde of spearmen. To the right of them was a giant next to the large property or large house. There was an assassin stuck in there next to the house. Then a unit of militia, a horde of polearms, 2 ballistas, yet another unit of militia, another unit of polearms, and in front of those was the giant, the general on winged beast, and I believe his flying instigator. In the upper left, I had a horde of spearmen along with a regiment of spearmen and a weapons team following behind them. In the cornfield there, I had my horde of warriors. The BSB with loot was right there. Next to them, 2 regiments of warriors. A horde of shock troops. I believe these did not have the brew of strength. These were sanguinary scriptures. The red ones were a horde of shock troops with the brew of strength. Behind the shock troops was my regiment of tunnel runners. To the right of the tunnel runners was my general on flea bag and yet another weapons team, and I deployed a single regiment over on the right hand side of the table, right hand of the large building there, just to slow stuff down so that they couldn't just whip around my flank without any opposition at all. So the Ratkin won the roll and decided to go second, and the reason why I go second is because in these objective scenarios sometimes it's just you need to cruise in there at the last minute and take it. So I went ahead and let Paulie go first. His bowman opened up on my spear horde and did a couple of wounds. His spearman took off to the right hand side. I didn't figure out that one. I guess he was just trying to get back to the middle when he realized I had so much strength there. On the right, it was a lot more aggressive. His polearms and his general on a winged beast plus the giant moved up to confront my little regiment over there. I have to say though that my flank over there was kind of a trap with my general, with the beast slayer and the weapons team. So I was hoping he would at least try that, but it turns out he did a pretty good job of foiling it. In the middle, one of his militia units ran forward. I think that's just to jam me up, which makes a lot of sense. The militia on the bottom just kind of angled itself toward the middle of the table, I guess, to move forward in the following turns. One thing about Ratkin is that even though they're an infantry army, they're actually fairly quick. Not as quick as having cavalry, obviously, but they can move ahead pretty well. And as much as people say anything about terrain being a spoof of shooting, speed is also a spoof of shooting. And in some cases, by having more terrain, you're actually making the shooting army better because you can't move as fast. So anyway, that's the end of the Kingdoms of Men first turn. Alright, this is the end of Ratkin turn 1 and the start of the Kingdoms of Men turn 2. I moved aggressively on the left flank with the Spearmen, the Weapons team, and the Spear Regiment. The other warriors kind of moved up to support along with the 2 regiments of warriors. The shock troops kind of stayed in line to using the large building as a shield to this flank. I left the war chief back on purpose in case the winged beast charged into that regiment, and also the weapons team stayed back there for the same reason. Okay, we actually started this battle one day and finished it the next, so there's a little dysfunction here between what happened. So this is the start, I believe, of Paulie's turn 3. Over on the left, the archers had charged the weapons team and destroyed it, and then moved forward far enough so that I would have to spin the spearmen to attack them. Somehow I charged his giant with my spearmen. I seem to remember it was 60 attacks in the flank. I barely scratched the paint on the damn things. Then the giant went ahead and charged into the shock troop horde that has the BSB with loot behind it. In the middle, my warriors and my regiment of warriors had charged into the unit of militia, and this is what I call a slap fight, which means both armies can't hit each other and can't hurt each other. At some point in time, I had charged my tunnel runners in with a brew of sharpness and did 14 wounds and wavered the polearms. Now, we were just talking about the game about having indomitable will, and this would have been the perfect place to have indomitable will. But again, you have to sacrifice something with points to make it work. And up in the upper right-hand corner, the general had charged and held on to my warriors for a turn, and then of course killed them. But all I did with the warriors, even though they were wavered, is I backed them out of the fight and just shot the general with the weapons team. And then after he turned, after they killed the giant, and the general killed the regiment the next turn, he turned toward me again, and I shot him and wavered the general. Now he's up to 8 wounds, so he's in a lot of trouble because of the way that the battle turned out. His giant is behind the general and really can't get by him to charge my weapons team. I went ahead and moved my general on the flea bag around to the side of the big building so that I wouldn't get charged, but whenever he came around the corner I would be able to charge him. So I had a plan. I don't know if it was going to work, but we'll see. Okay, so this is the result of Kingdoms of Men 4. The giant managed to do 4 wounds to the shock troops, which really wasn't going to bother them. The militia did 4 to my warrior regiment. As you can see, his archer regiment just marched 12 inches forward to get away from the spear regiment that was trying to run them down. At the bottom, they really couldn't do much about the tunnel runners, so he charged both characters into him, his assassin and the instigator, into their flank, and got them up to 4 wounds. So I thought that could have went a lot worse, and it turned out it wasn't as horrible as I thought. His shooting had got my other shock troop horde up to 6 wounds, and since we needed to get to the middle of the table, he moved his polearms aggressively forward to make me engage them and kind of pull me out of the center of the table. Up at the top, the general and winged beast just backed away, and his giant moved in to block me from shooting at him for a turn, but that really wasn't going to work since he's nimble. Alright, in response to the Kingdoms of Men turn 4, in the upper left hand corner, his archer regiment spun around ready to take on the spearmen. Down in the middle, his giant had died during this turn from the shock troops, and also the militia hordes that was in the way. I'm kind of jammed up here because of I can't really rotate and stuff because of the proximity of my own units. The tunnel runners went ahead and destroyed that unit of pole arms, but now they're about to pay for it with 2 units on their flanks. I think it's actually 1 unit on the flank and 1 in the front. But regardless, over on the right hand side, the shock troop horde, I went ahead and popped the plague pots. I didn't know if I would survive or not, or if he would be wavered or not. So I went ahead and did it just in case, and figuring that also that even if he just backs away and shoots at me, now I've got I'm stealthy now. Up at the top, his general did die to the horrors of the weapons team, and the giant is kind of out of place now behind the building, and really he's going to have to boogie to do anything else the rest of the game. One thing, if you've ever played Paulie, he is a cagey son of a gun. He charged his instigator into my warrior horde and did a couple of wounds. He charged the assassin into my wounded regiment and did a couple of wounds. But the big thing is they really kind of kept me from moving. The instigator is a mighty hero, so he either has to die before to move to him. Now, the assassin is not mighty. He is yielding, and so you can charge right through him or see right through him. It doesn't matter. In the middle, he did just back off after being wavered and then shot my horde. He rolled 2 6s to hit, and then rolled a couple of just like 2 1s to get the number of hits, and then rolled 2 1s to wound. So it was a comedy just to see, I was like, oh crap, I'm going to get hit, a bunch of times, and absolutely nothing happened. In the upper left-hand corner, I think his archer shot and did a wound to my little regiment up there. But the hard part is I'm so congested right here, not to mention him congested in real life. I'm so congested around the middle here after losing my tunnel runners that I'm having a hard time moving my units to get into position. And all of a sudden I started thinking about, what about being within 12 inches of the center? And being jammed up made it that even worse. Alright, this is the Ratkin response on turn 5. In the upper left corner, the spear regiment gets the archers up to 6 wounds, but does not do anything to them. Down here in the middle, you see what I'm talking about with the yielding heroes. What I did was I went ahead and charged the warrior regiment through the hero and into the spear horde just to keep them off of me, and went ahead and charged the shock troop horde into the assassin to kill him and to get him out of the way. My warrior unit there, I went ahead and popped the plague pots for I don't know why, just because I guess I'm getting ready to get charged by that big militia unit too, and to fight the instigator. I don't think my warriors did any kind of wounds to the instigator. Down in the middle, my shock troops had reversed field and were headed over toward the middle, but he charged that instigator out of that battle and into my general, I think, and that kind of jammed me up so I couldn't get turned around. My war machine did a couple of more wounds to the giant, and we just continued to follow him and shoot him, I think, the rest of the game. But good turn. I'm still thinking about now how I'm going to get to the middle on turn 6. You can kind of see that little splat thing in the middle there. That is to be within 12 inches of the center. And with his militia about to engage, that's going to put us at a draw instead of a win, even though that the battle is kind of one-sided at this point. Okay, during his turn 6, he did charge his militia into my warriors, and though it's kind of hard to see, when they were sitting there, I was stuck behind my general fighting his instigator, but I was 11.5 inches from the militia horde, so I went ahead and charged them in the rear with my shock troops. And the reason why I did this was I didn't necessarily want to kill the unit, I just had to get within 12 inches of the center somehow, some way, and so that worked. I mean, it's 90 attacks in the rear, even though I was hindered, and I had the brew of strength, which makes no difference against shock troops. But it was really the only way I could get in there to try to win the game. Otherwise, it would have been a draw because I'm so jammed up there. I can't get anything to move around. His spearmen did eventually kill my regiment of warriors down there. And right now, I've pretty much got the game, except unless there's a turn 7. And guess what? There was a turn 7. One thing that when playing a game with scenarios that you learn is never stop playing the game for scenarios. And to that end, Paulie charged his instigator out of the battle with my general and into the spear horde just to try to keep them from moving because he's a mighty hero. And so that was very, very useful. His spearmen did charge into the flank of my warriors, and for some reason, I don't know if we either didn't roll the melee or they bounced off. But at this point now, I had my horde of shock troops within 12 inches of the center with a high unit strength. I have a unit strength of 4, I believe. So that would have given me the win just from that particular situation. Okay, this is the last picture of the game, and for some reason I think that the spearmen, despite the flank attack, did bounce off the warriors. And, I did have 2 rallies there and the ASB, so, that could have happened. I just don't remember what happened. But at the end, it turned out that the Ratkin won because of unit strength in the center of the table. So, but now that I look at it, it could have been debatable. But really well fought game as far as the Paulie's ability to just screw me up. And you'd think with all, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 hordes there and a regiment, but I still can't manage to get more than one of those within 12 inches of the center. So kind of my bad, kind of his good tactics, with the instigator charging those spearmen over there just to keep keep from moving forward using his mighty skill. That was some really good playing. All right, as usual at the end of my battle reports, I do my afterthoughts. And the cool thing about this battle was that we basically played with the same armies we did before. He had some tweaks, I had some tweaks, but nothing really major changed in either list, and they were just little subtle things that happened. I think the big deal for me was learning from all the dumb mistakes I made last game. And I really gave away like 300 points last game with no effect at all at the start of the game. And so this time I tried to preserve my troops and not just piddle them away with making stupid maneuvers. So this time I played a lot more cohesively and had a plan for his big flyers and his giants and stuff like that. So I really think that that's the difference between this game and the last game. Now, a couple of things that Paulie did that were really items that I'm putting in my toolbox of good things to do. One thing, he was trailing his winged beast with his giant, and the winged beast isn't a super powerful model. It's powerful in a flank charge or something like that, but not really going into something. But by doing that, he kept my general from running in with his blade of beast slaying and putting a lot of wax on him. Because if I would have charged him with him, then the giant would have charged me. So that was some good playing there to protect his winged beast. And the second thing he did was he really did a great job of using his assassin and his instigator with the wings of honey maze. At the end of the game, he charged his instigator out of one melee right into another one, and because he's mighty, and kept my horde from moving into the 12-inch zone to score. So that was a really good move. And then using his assassin to charge into wounded regiments, almost using him like a missile weapon, and trying to polish those regiments off or weaken them up even more. During the game, one of the things I did early in the game, and I know you don't really see it in the battle report, was I did eventually sacrifice my assassin to kill his boomstick wizard. And the reason why is because at the very end of the game, your units are so beat up and so vulnerable to being to having to take test. And so I felt it was worth the sacrifice of my assassin to to get rid of that guy. And in retrospect, it was a really good choice, because I mean, you start having units that are teetering on the edge, and then that guy hits you at the end of the game, and you've lost a horde. Where with that guy not around, you're pretty safe. So some good tactics came out of this game. I'm glad. I mean, like I said, Paulie's given me a couple from my own toolbox now, and hopefully I'll be even tougher to play against because of that experience. But that's the nice thing about playing people that you don't normally get to play, is that you learn things from them by just watching them and saying, "Hey, that's a good idea. Let's put that in the toolbox of tactics and thoughts for in the future, and see where I can use that potentially to help win some games, or to help me be more competitive. I mean, I might not win, but I feel a little bit better about myself by not getting slaughtered." One of the things about this game that was really both of us having the assassins, and he had the winged instigator, and those guys are really very flexible. And it kind of comes down to what my friend Sean and I were talking about this morning. He was on his way to work. Was this edition is so much better for the tactics of using individual characters, monsters, things like that are so strong, that they can do things that sometimes you don't even picture that they're able to do. Just because of, then some of them have a good number of swings. You charge in with two of them, now you've got almost a regiment's worth of swings. They actually hit very well and do a lot of damage. So just put that in your thoughts next time, is when you're creating an army. I used to be very minimal on characters, and now I'm kind of going mid to heavy, just because of the things that I've learned the last few weeks of playing. So anyway, good playing, everybody, and I hope you enjoy the battle report.